Hello and welcome back to Module A. This section is about threats and vulnerabilities. I'm Brian Hauer again, and I'm excited to guide you through this important foundation of cybersecurity education. In this session, we'll explore the various types of cyber threats that exist in today's digital landscape and understand the vulnerabilities that make systems susceptible to these attacks. This presentation will introduce you to the key concepts you need for your asynchronous activities that follow, where you'll apply this knowledge in practical hands-on ways. Let's get started. So when we look and at what type of threats are out there, there are many. We got malicious attacks that damage and steal data, which in turn affects the digital life. Sources of cyber threats are state-sponsored, terrorists, you got industrial spies, hackers, hacktivists, uh, cyber espionage, all those affect you. So there are many, many, many types, as we said. So let's look at a few of these types of cyber threats. So when we look here, we see that, you know, we explore the major threats are phishing. Phishing is probably one of the biggest attacks that's out there. And this technique used to steal a user's data from the internet or a computer connected device, it's one of the most common and effective attack methods because it exploits human psychology rather than technical vulnerabilities. Attackers send messages that appear to come from trusted sources, maybe a bank or school administrator or even a colleague, to trick people into revealing sensitive information like passwords, credit card numbers, or social security numbers. So there are many types, as you can see here. So phishing emails, of course, is probably the classic form. Fraudulent emails that appear legitimate. There's domain spoofing, which involves creating fake websites that look like real ones. Voice phishing, or vishing as they call it, uses phone calls to trick victims. Then there's SMS phishing, or smishing, uses text messages, obviously. And then clone phishing, which duplicates a legitimate email you've received before. And then there's typo squatting, which registers domain names with common typos. And then there's the evil twin creates fake Wi-Fi networks that mimic legitimate ones. And whale phishing targets high-profile individuals like executives or administrators. As you can see, the illustration, phishing often involves the attacker posing as someone trustworthy to lure victims into providing sensitive information. Ways to prevent phishing attacks. Phishing is a technique used, that we know used to steal your information. So how do we protect ourselves and teach our students to protect themselves from phishing? First, know what a phishing scam looks like. Look for proof, poor grammar, urgent language, suspicious sender addresses, and requests for sensitive information. Second, don't click on random links. Hover over the links to see where they really go before clicking. When in doubt, go directly to the website by typing the address yourself. Third, get free anti-phishing add-ons for your browser. These tools can detect and block known phishing sites. Fourth, don't give your information to an unsecured site. Look for HTTPS and the padlock icon in your browser address bar. Fifth, change passwords regularly, something we don't all do, and I'm susceptible to that. If credentials are compromised, regularly changes limit the window of vulnerability. Finally, install a firewall. Firewalls act as barriers between you and computers and potential intruders. These are practical skills we can teach our students that will serve them throughout their lives. Excuse me. SQL injection threat. So, we're moving on to another threat, and this is called SQL injection. In an SQL injection threat, the attacker sends malicious query to a device or server. The server is then forced to expose sensitive information. SQL stands for Structured Query Language, which is used to communicate with databases. When web applications don't properly validate user input, attackers can inject malicious SQL code that the database will execute, potentially exposing or modifying sensitive data. As you can see in the example in the slide, an attacker might input something like John Smith, which could trick the database into revealing information it shouldn't. To prevent SQL injection threats, we need to validate user inputs to ensure they contain only expected data, sanitize data by limiting special characters that could be used in SQL commands, use stored procedures in the database which separate data from commands, and establish appropriate privileges that even if an attacker succeeds, the damage is limited with strict access controls. It's a great example of why secure coding practices matter, and it is something students in advanced cybersecurity courses will learn to both exploit ethically in controlled environments and prevent. So, the man in the middle attack is a security breach where criminals, cyber criminals, place themselves between the communication system and a client and a server. Essentially, the attacker intercepts communication between two parties without either one of them knowing. So, looking at the diagram, you see how this works. The user thinks they're communicating directly from the web application, but actually the perpetrator has inserted themselves into the middle of the communication. They can eavesdrop on the conversation, steal data, or even modify the messages being sent back and forth. There are several types of man-in-the-middle attacks. Session hijacking, where an attacker attacks your web session. IP spoofing, where the attacker disguises their identity by falsifying their IP address. Replay attacks, where a valid data transmission is maliciously repeated. To prevent these attacks, use strong router login credentials. Implement a virtual private network or VPN to encrypt your internet connection. Use strong encryption on the access points, especially with your Wi-Fi. And force HTTPS connections whenever possible to ensure encrypted communication. This is particularly important with school environments and often have many users in the same network. So this is really, really a vulnerability that you can see out there in schools. So malware. Malware, is a malicious software that gets installed into a system when a user clicks on a dangerous link or an email. The term malware is actually short for malicious software and encompasses many different types of threats. Let's look at the main types. Viruses attach themselves to clean files and spread throughout the system, corrupting them. There's Trojans that disguise themselves as legitimate software but perform malicious actions. Worms spread through networks without human action, replicating themselves. Ransomware encrypts your files and demands payments for the decryption key. The diagram shows various types of malware, including rootkits, spyware, ransomware, remote access Trojans, worms, and viruses, and many others. To prevent malware infections, regularly update your computer software. Updates often include security patches for newly discovered vulnerabilities. Be careful while opening unknown email attachments or images. If you don't recognize it, don't open it. These are just very simple rules that as users and especially educators, we can help protect ourselves and our students. Zero-day attacks, particularly, are really, really dangerous. And it's an attack done by hackers when a network, hardware, or software vulnerability is announced publicly, but before a patch can fix it. And you see this many times with companies that do that. They had this vulnerability, and then maybe they didn't get it fixed before that somebody else goes into it. The term zero day refers to the fact that developers have 0 days to fix the vulnerability. As you can see in the diagram, there's a cycle. Vulnerability exists, hackers discover it, and create an exploit. They carry on attacks, and the organizations scramble to respond. This is one of the most challenging threats to defend against the hackers out there. There's no known fix when the attack occurs. To protect against zero-day attacks, use an advanced proactive email security solution, educate users about safe computing practices, and deploy a web application firewall to filter malicious traffic. Implement also network access control to limit the spread of the attacks. These are key to defense. And also, again, you're trying this will be in a lot of advanced classes, but this is good information for your students to understand. So cross-site scripting, commonly abbreviated as XSS, is a cyber attack where attackers send malicious code to a reputable website. When a victim visits that trusted website, the malicious script executes in the browser. The diagram shows how this works in 3 steps. First, the hacker injects the trusted website in a malicious script. The victim visits the trusted website and triggers the malicious script. And then the victim browser executes the malicious script and unknowingly forwards desired information like session tokens or cookies to the attacker. This is particularly insidious because the victims believe they're on a legitimate, trusted website. The attack exploits that trust. So, cross-site scripting attacks, we need to focus, are ones that focus on the web applications handle data. So we need to prevent this is by filter input on arrival, encode data on output, use appropriate response headers, and implement a content security policy. This is just one way to protect yourselves with this. Now, advanced persistent threat. Occurs when the attacker gains unauthorized access to a system or network and remains undetected for a long time. They might be in there just looking around. The key characteristics are advanced, using sophisticated techniques, persistence, and it's a threat with specific malicious objectives. APTs often target high-value information like intellectual property, government secrets, or financial data. To prevent advanced firewall as your first line of defense, enable a web application firewall, install antivirus, of course, implement intrusion prevention systems, and create a sandbox environment to test suspicious files safely, and install a VPN to encrypt this. So password attacks. We know that password attacks is very common. Despite all the technology advances, passwords remain one of the weakest links in cybersecurity, not because of the technology, but because of how humans use them. There are 2 common techniques used to crack passwords. Brute force, guessing involves systematic trying every possible combination until the correct one is found. Dictionary attacks use a list of common passwords and words that are used to try to gain access. Attackers know that many people use the very basic password 123. Ways to prevent, obviously, is use strong passwords, long, complex. Good rule of thumb is at least 12 characters. Used to be 8 characters. Now they're saying 12. Multi-factor authentication, creating a second form like a phone number or a code. And teaching students about password security is one of the most practical and immediate applicable cybersecurity lessons we can provide. So that could start at a very young age, elementary and even up. So it's really important skill about passwords. A few other types of attacks before we move on is, we got drive-by attack when simply visiting a compromised website automatically downloads malware. Denial of service, attacks overwhelm a system and flood it. Distributed denial of service attacks use multiple compromised systems. And eavesdropping attacks involves intercepting network traffic to steal information. And AI-powered attacks represents the newest frontier where artificial intelligence is being used to create more sophisticated adapted attacks. And this is why cybersecurity is so important. The more AI is involved, the more issues that we will have. Cyber threats and intelligence. So finally, let's talk about cyber threat intelligence. This is the amount of data that becomes cyber threat information that is collected, evaluated in the context of its source. and analyzed through rigorous, firm tradecraft techniques for industry experts. In other words, cyber threat intelligence is about gathering information and threats and attackers, analyzing that information to understand their methods and motivations, and using that knowledge to better defend against these attacks. This is an important concept because cybersecurity isn't just about reacting to attacks, it's about anticipating them. Threat intelligence helps organizations stay ahead of the attackers by understanding and evolving threat landscape. For educators, this means staying informed of current threats and teaching students to think like both an attacker and a defender, understanding the why and the how behind cyber threats. So being a white hacker, being a good hacker for the sake of protecting, which is our role as a cybersecurity educator. So what we're going to do in this activity is after this video, and you finish this video, we have our module packet. And in the module packet, we worked through the cybersecurity history during, and you had questions answered after the live session. In this session, if you go to the vulnerability, what we have here is focused on identifying and analyzing network vulnerabilities in a school environment. Now you're going to say, this looks Greek to me. Well, I'm going to give you a little idea of how to approach this. So, participant, you're going to examine the fictional high school network containing intentional security vulnerabilities, identify these issues, discuss their potential impacts, and develop mitigation strategies. So look at that. Now I give you clues. I'm not giving you all this. If you look through here, I have little clues, and I'm going to give you one, like this firmware. When was the last time it was updated? 2019. That tells you something. So I want you to go through here. You will go through here and identify them. And then you will look at this. We'll have to identify the network vulnerabilities, maybe list them underneath here. And then what are some mitigation strategies that they could do here? So you're going to answer that. And then, of course, each section has a set of questions for you to do at the end, reflection questions that tie into that. So this is the activity for threats and vulnerabilities as part of Module A. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I'm excited to have you here, part of this cybersecurity pathway. And as we begin this pathway, know that this is just the beginning of your journey, and you're a dedicated educator wanting to help, bring cybersecurity to your students and protect your students in the future and provide career opportunities for them. So thank you, and I'll see you at the next lesson.